What is Kratom? What does it feel like? What's the deal with this stuff? Hi, my name is Becca, and I have been Kratom free for 4 years. And on this channel, I get into that as well as creating and being a part of a really cool community of people who have also experienced Kratom addiction and recovery. So, welcome to you. Okay, so what is Kratom? Kratom is a leaf from a tree that is native to Southeast Asia. And the active ingredients, components, I guess we should call them, maybe it could be an ingredient, in Kratom mimics opiates in the brain. So, what does that look like with how Kratom feels? So if you're not familiar with opiates, I'm sure that you are, but opiates are used medically for pain management, and they are known to, as well as dealing with pain stuff, they are known to give a euphoric aspect to them. So what that means is it makes you feel happy and blissed out and that kind of thing. But they are also known for being highly addictive and highly destructive substances. That as well is what Kratom is like. It's not exactly bioidentical to opiates, like opiate medications like heroin, morphine, fentanyl, all that kind of stuff. Kratom is slightly different, but the way that the active components in Kratom work are very similar, if not identical, to cut and dry opiates in the brain and in the body. So what does that feel like? What's up with that? I'll share my experience with how Kratom made me feel, and I'm also going to share how Kratom made me feel as I got further into my addiction, because when you first hear about what Kratom does and how it makes you feel, it can seem very enticing. And that's not the purpose of this video. So, how Kratom made me feel. When I first took Kratom for the very first time, it made me feel amazing. It made me feel euphoric, which is that blissed out feeling that we're talking about. It made me feel like there was nothing wrong at all. It made me feel very happy. I've told this story before, but it was on a summer day when I first took Kratom, and it was a summer morning, actually. It was first thing in the morning. And I would say it was probably, I don't know, maybe like 9 o'clock or so, or maybe a little bit earlier, because the sun had risen, but it was just coming up. And there was still dew on the plants in my garden. And I took the Kratom for the first time, and then I went out to work in my garden, and it was like colors seemed more vivid, and like the dew on the plants almost seemed like iridescent. And the euphoric aspect of Kratom really kicked in, and I just felt like it was the best moment of my life, and that I was so elated and so happy, and there was really no reason to feel that way. But I was just completely blissed out. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like, did I just find like some miracle cure for every ailment, everything wrong, any pain, any sadness, whatever? So I remember just feeling super blissed out. And it lasted for a few hours. And I had taken, because it was the first time that I had ever taken it, I had taken a smaller dose. And the way that Kratom works is in the smaller doses, it's known to have more of an uplifting, euphoric sort of quality to it. But the more that you take, the more depressant and sedative in nature that it becomes. So that first time that I took it, I didn't take much. And so I really experienced that like uplifting sort of thing. Needless to say, that effect from Kratom did not last long, meaning as I continued taking it, it didn't stay that awesome, let me tell you. And actually, it got way, way, way worse. So this euphoric, uplifting quality and this amazing experience that I had, that's highly addictive if you think about it. When I first started learning about Kratom, it was the only thing that I knew about it was that it was no more addictive than coffee was the information that I had. And so I didn't know about how addictive Kratom really was. I mean, coffee is definitely addictive, but the thing about Kratom is that euphoric aspect coupled with, like we were talking about, the opiate nature in it. With opiates come withdrawals. With, the Kratom high and dependency, there comes withdrawals. So I didn't know how addictive Kratom was going to be when I first took it, but what I did know was that I wanted to feel the way that it made me feel that first time. I wanted to feel that way all the time. And so I continued to chase that feeling and to chase that high and that euphoria for the 3 years that I was addicted to Kratom. And so as things moved on, and let's talk about how Kratom felt when I was highly addicted to it. So like I said, in the larger amounts, Kratom has more of a sedative, depressant quality to it. And Kratom has this really weird way, I think all substances do for that matter, of the more that you take Kratom, the worse that you feel, but the more that you need it. So it creates this cycle of needing Kratom. And the downside to taking Kratom or any substance regularly is that we develop a tolerance to it. So the higher our tolerance becomes, those smaller doses that we were able to take in the beginning, our body has developed a tolerance to that. So we're not going to have the same effect from the smaller amounts. So naturally, for a lot of us, we start taking more and more and more. And then what that means with taking large amounts of Kratom is you really step into like what I like to refer to as the dark side of Kratom. Because Kratom can be all, sunshine and rainbows and everything is beautiful and uplifting and euphoric. There can be that aspect to Kratom when we first start it, but then there can be the really dark side of Kratom where the more that you take, it's really awful. And excuse me, so what does that feel like? In the worst of my addiction, I was taking 10 to 15 gram doses, which is a lot of Kratom. And when I would take those 10 to 15 gram doses, I was coming from a place of being in withdrawals from the previous dose wearing off. And I would be in a lot of physical and mental discomfort. Physically, I would go through withdrawals where I would be sweating, my body would ache, and mentally was the worst part of it for me, where I would become extremely anxious, extremely irritable. I would have panic attacks. So when I would take that large dose of Kratom, well, first of all, you got to choke down all that swamp water, and taking 15 grams of Kratom is freaking terrible, to be honest with you. And so I would choke down the swamp water. I would literally, at the worst of my addiction, and you can refer to a video on my channel here called A Day in the Life of a Kratom Addict, where I talk in more detail about this. But basically, I would have to lay down or like sit on the ground with my knees up to my chest like I am right now in the fetal position, and I would wait for that dose to kick in. And because it was such a large amount of Kratom, what came with that was, yes, the withdrawals would go away that I was experiencing, but I would oftentimes get really physically ill from taking that large of an amount of kratom. And it was horrible. I don't know why I kept chasing this high for so long, and I kept thinking that, okay, if I take more, it's going to be better, because it just got worse and worse. And what it would be like was like, yeah, the withdrawals would go away, but I didn't get that euphoria anymore after a certain point. And really it was just like the relief of my body not being in withdrawals was kind of all that it gave me. But oftentimes I would throw up because of it. Oftentimes my eyes would wiggle, like, because it's basically like kratom toxicity. And it was horrible, and I would have to just sit there, and I couldn't really do anything. I couldn't like get up and walk around. I would literally just have to sit or lie there and like stay on my phone on YouTube and just focus on the stupidest videos that I could find as a way to like mentally escape it. So that's what kratom felt like at the larger doses. And what sucked even more was that the more that I would take, as it would wear off, those withdrawals would even be more aggressive. And so it was horrible. So I wanted to show you in this video the two sides of it, that like if you hear this like, oh, it was amazing, and like, the dew and the plants was iridescent and it was great, and I was so happy, that you would know the counterpart to this. And you might be thinking like, oh, if I stay at a smaller amount, maybe I can still feel that way. The way that it works, like we said, is that what's going to happen is that you're going to inevitably start taking more and more. Will you end up on 15 grams a day? Maybe not, maybe more. I've known people who have taken over 100 grams of powdered leaf kratom a day. I've seen it with my own eyes. So you may not end up going down that path, but what's going to happen is that the tolerance is going to raise. And if taking 1.5 grams right now is giving you that euphoric aspect, it's not going to give you that euphoric aspect if you keep taking it. And really what I want to convey with this is that if you're considering, when you see this video, like, oh, well, you know what, the smaller amount seems really enticing to me, and I've been hearing about kratom and it sounds great, and I'm just going to take a small amount and see what happens. I want to convey the risks of kratom in this video to you, because although it may feel good for some of us, you are playing with fire when you take that 1.5 grams. Because as with me, if it feels so good that you are enticed to continue taking it, or to try to take it again next month or whatever it is, there is a risk that you can become addicted to it. And there is a risk that there can be a lot of damage caused by that addiction. So if you're seeing this and you're interested in trying kratom and you're wondering what it feels like, I hope that this can be a fair warning to you that it's not worth it. Heroin feels great too, but is it worth it to try it? And I'm not saying that heroin and kratom are the same thing. I'm just saying that something that feels really good like that, I promise you there's always a payoff. There's always a payback to it. There's always going to be something that you're going to have to pay back for that feeling. If you're borrowing joy, if you're manufacturing that fake joy and that fake peace, there's going to be a price to pay for it. So I highly recommend that you think about that. And if you're interested in more kratom related content, kratom addiction and recovery related content, I invite you to stick around, and I thank you for checking out this video. Bye.